Yeah, I mean, it was tough. My two kids. We like them too. I think they got some. No. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, ironically, you went to us.
I can't deal with it.
You know what?
Yeah, I recognize you, but I come over and say hello. I didn't realize you.
Especially visualize, and then it's done.
I know.
Acquisition of substitutes.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yeah.
You can tell the new family. Yeah, you're going to be.
The question is, is there a way?
Some of them try to hold on.
It's cooler, right? But then it's just about shoulders up.
Yeah, yeah.
Go into town.
Yeah.
Really?
Good morning.
And with other schools, you guys have other. Nice to meet you. Small companies. Yeah, just swimming. Yeah. What's the focus? Swimming like biology. Skiing.
We're super psyched to have you on board, and we got a lot to work on.
Yeah, about a year and a half ago, I wanted to prefer excellent water temple.
So many people do it. 4 years now. It's like one of the worst places to stand in line. It's right down.
My good friend grew up with it, so if you go out on the main bridge, the other side, you can't go on the other side, believe it or not. My friend's mom, she's really great. She just gets your number. You almost have to be.
Decided to push the Quebec and
so that's like, just be
So yeah, there's a lot of you guys have facilities, I know here, and essentially nothing.
Nice to see you too.
I didn't realize that.
So we changed it a little bit. So I had two chairs. And I want to introduce one of these chairs.
Lloyd, hit the ball around. That's awesome. Yeah. It's a no frills kind of thing, which I love. Just it's trying to get on. Where do you live? I mean, someone can enjoy. That's not bad. It's kind of going against the traffic.
And no, and this is one of the points I'll talk about. Why don't we just scoot it? What's the answer?
He didn't like it.
Exactly.
Sprinklers must have flailed.
Not you.
I'll try to.
Did you ever go sledding down the Severance? Pretty insane.
People you do things.
There's no like hang up. 60s, like modern. Definitely fun. You know what happened? We'd be like, probably like little rats at the time. You know, 12, maybe 14. Playing frisbee and some
Good morning. We can have It's a challenge trying to get through traffic getting here.
Oh yeah, ever since they closed the Longfellow Bridge, it's harder getting in.
That's another story. Have you been on the FAB or?
I'm on the working CRO-CMO.
So I ran the drug discovery committee for 10 years and now I'm on the second. Okay, that's good. You know Neil Bergenthal, he's now at
I don't know him.
Yeah, he ran the drug discovery committee for 10 years.
That's awesome. Are you still with us director now?
Oh, no, that's Neil, he's with me. I'm looking at it.
Okay. There's so much going on with the AstraZeneca, Pfizer.
I know, it's interesting, although who knows if it's all over. That's the best final
I
outcome.
don't think so. I think shareholders in AstraZeneca are insistent that we should go through. That's the news I need. Not me.
More consolidation in the industry at that level, though. It's
Oh, yeah. Somebody made a joke a long time ago. Eventually, we all will be working for Pfizer.
Well, there are people I know that work for Pfizer and then they didn't, and then they do again.
Hey Bob, how you doing?
Yeah.
No complaints, right? No complaints.
All right, so if everyone wants to make sure you grab breakfast, fuel up with your coffee, we're gonna get started in just a minute or two. But she wasn't supposed to be here tonight.
Right, John, how you doing? Good to see you.
We do. If there's not enough seats at the table, we can scoot over or you can grab this row right here. We just wanted to make sure that everyone could see and was able to engage in dialogue. So feel free to pull up a chair if you want to sit at the table. Yeah, Sarah's going to sit back there.
Bobby, Mr. Tequila? You let me Good to meet you. Good to meet you, sir. Well, just about you, exactly about you. So, current, so Anna Prasad has been with the Millennium overall.
So good morning, everyone. It's really great to see a full house today. As I mentioned in our email, we're kind of going to reformat this meeting to hopefully better capitalize everyone's time and create some good dialogue. So I'm going to quickly run through what today's agenda is going to be. And then, as you can see, Bob is joining us, so he's going to welcome everyone and say a few words. And then we'll get into it. So what we're going to start with introductions. As you can see, there's a lot of new faces in the room, and we're really excited. We've got a bunch of new co-chairs on board. Susan, what do we have, about 10?
10, yes, at least 10. I think
At least
one
10. So pretty much every working group has at least one new co-chair, so we're really excited about that. So we'll go around the room, everyone will introduce yourself. Please say what company you're with and what working group you're on. And if you're a new co-chair, please note that as well. After the intros, Bob's gonna, again, address everyone. And then we're gonna do a few slides on what the forums have looked like so far in Q1 and Q2 this year. So we'll talk about what attendance has looked like and which working groups have really been represented. Then we're gonna take a look at the pipeline moving forward for the rest of the year. And this is what's gonna be different. We're gonna have a content piece. So Sheila from Health Advances is gonna come in and do a quick overview of our Impact 2020 report with a specific focus on the value piece. And the reason for that is we think the value piece is really critical to our members. And we think it's a perfect opportunity for the forums to kick off some dialogue around that piece. Because we think it's the most challenging piece to implement because it's kind of a culture shift. And then we're going to brainstorm about maybe a 3-part series in the fall around value. All right, so let's get started with some introductions. Brian, if you want to start.
Yes, so hi everyone. Thanks, Kendall. I'm Brian Fenton. I'm on the FAB Business Development Committee and I'm with Shire.
I'm Elon Small. I'm on the HR working group and I'm at Novartis.
I'm Lee Merrill. I'm on the HR working group. I'm a new co-chair, and I'm from Forma Therapeutics.
Angelos Dobleragou from Epizyme. I'm in the formulation and drug delivery. Walid Bozic with Shire. I'm with legal and regulatory work.
I'm Alex Nevroshkin, neoadvanced technologist. I'm co-chair of formulation and drug delivery.
I'm Dave Mantis. I'm from the Mass College of Pharmacy. I'm on the Legal and Regulatory Affairs Committee, the new co-chair.
I'm Josh Mendelbrem. I'm from Biogen. I'm on the PV group.
Edna Michelle from Sanofi, new co-chair in the PD working group.
Mo Tisi, I work at Boston Children's Hospital, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Business Development and Finance working.
I'm Luba Greenwood. I am at Pfizer, and I'm a new co-chair for Entrepreneurship University.
I'm Denise Aronson from Safety Partners, and I'm on the Safety, Environment, and Facilities working group.
Nicolette Miranda, and I'm at Novartis, and I'm a new chair for the CRO-CFO.
Morning, I'm Mark Cody with Excelliant Partners and a co-chair on Entrepreneur University.
I'm Sabrina Laszlo with Mexican Partners, and I'm a global advisor.
I'm Craig Dunbar, Blend Therapeutics, new co-chair of the formulation group.
Debbie Benjamin, Celgene, and I'm on the advisory board.
Ali Cohen from Beryllium, head of research, and I'm on the FAB.
I'm David Altman. I'm with Boston Children's Hospital, and I'm a new co-chair on the Marcom group.
Rob Goldstein, ALS Therapy Development Institute, marketing group.
Joanne Schindler, a new co-chair on the Biostats Data Management Clinical Trials Group, and I'm with Syndevrix.
Sarah Toller at VoiceOn Consulting, and I'm both on the legal and regulatory as well as the clinical trials working groups, and new co-chairs for both.
James Richardson, William Gallagher Associates, part of the HR working group.
Konstantin Linik from Nana McLaren Fish. I'm on the legal and regulatory.
Bob Wondrick, I'm at Carafast, and I'm on the FAB advisory board.
Mike Henry at Launchpad Venture Group, and I'm on the FAB.
Good morning. My name is Bhavi Mittal. I work at Millennium Takeda, and I'm the co-chair for CRO-CMO subgroup.
You all know me, but Lana, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lana Gladstein. I'm a new co-chair of the Legal and Regulatory Group, and I'm with Pepper Hamilton.
And I'm going to also introduce the MassBio staff that's here today. So John, if you want to introduce yourself, because some of the new co-chairs may not know us.
I'm John Hallinan. I'm the Chief Business Officer of MassBio. I've been here for about a year, but I've worked with the organization for many years as co-chair of the Finance Committee and Entrepreneurs University.
I'm Sarah McDonald, Vice President of Development and Communications here.
Most of you probably know Susan, whether you've seen her in person or not. You definitely corresponded with her. And I'm Kendall O'Connell, if you don't know me, and I'm Vice President of Member Services and our in-house counsel here. And now that we've introduced everyone, I want to make sure that folks take an opportunity. If you haven't met one of the new co-chairs in person, after everything, please take some time and introduce yourself and welcome them aboard. Hi, Nils. Do you want to introduce yourself quickly since we just finished introductions?
Yeah, so my name is Nils Bergman. Right now, I should say president with AstraZeneca. I've been with MassBio. I was co-chair of the drug discovery committee together with Bob here since, well, Bob was earlier, but I've been since 2005. And now I'm on the Forum Advisory Board.
Wonderful, thank you. And now I'm going to hand it over to our president and CEO, Bob Coughlin.
Thanks, Kendall. I'd like to just start off by thanking our returning leaders and chairs and members, and I want to really congratulate and welcome the new folks on board. It's important that we get together collectively as a group like this because, you know, when you think of what the mission of MassBio is, it's not, you know, just doing what's best for HR or communications or drug discovery or policy or the deep aspect of what we do. It's really, it's been challenging and somewhat daunting over the past 6 or 7 years to make sure that we're creating that environment, that climate, so that the industry as a whole can succeed. And when we did the MassBio 2015 report, you know, I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical that you could hire consultants and do some brainstorming and come up with a strategic plan, pay a lot of money, and have it really be as effective as it was. And when we did the 2015 report, we found that, you know, we needed to create innovation services to accelerate the creation of new companies. It showed that capital formation was going to be more difficult, and Wall Street was on the verge of going away, and it did. We had to change our model to work with big pharma companies to fund the small companies. And as all this was happening, it was really an aha moment for myself, the board, and you know, members of the MassBio team, because everything that they outlined in that report was really starting to become true, whether it was good news or bad news. But we were able to react to it. And when you look at us as a trade association, we've got, you know, 26, 27, 28 full-time employees here that work their tails off, but we're really generated, the activity, the content, the programming is generated through volunteer members who work, you know, employees of our member companies, and that's all you. I know the pay isn't good, but what you do is so important, because we're having a strategy session today. We're going to talk about, you're going to hear about Impact 2020, which is our new 5-year strategic plan, and it's a lot different than what 2015 told us we needed to focus on. Now, you may or may not agree with what this report is saying we need to do. I'm a believer, you know, and we may need to tweak things as time goes along, and that's okay. But there's a couple areas of the 2020 report that are pretty, you know, it's surprising. The same way 2015 told us Wall Street was going to go away and the whole industry was going to be funded by big pharma to continue to succeed. I mean, a lot of that stuff back then we thought was a little cuckoo. But we're the best place in the world for this industry right now, undoubtedly. And now, you know, when I say to the board, a lot of the times, it's really a good time for me to go get a different job because, right, you either leave too late or too early. Right now, it's like we're on top. But that's not going to be the case. We're going to, with this report and with your help and in creating programming based on the areas of expertise that we have in our industry and integrating it, we'll be able to You know, and I hate to use a hockey analogy because the Bruins, I shaved, the Bruins let me down really bad this year, and now the Canadians, they stink now. Why couldn't they stink a couple weeks ago? But the reality of it is, you know, people always thought Wayne Gretzky, you know, one of the second or third best hockey players ever. He used to say, people would say, why are you always where the puck's going? And he'd say, well, why are you always where the puck is? And he'd say, well, because I skate to where the puck is going. What we're talking about here is how do we take the cluster, the ecosystem, whatever the buzzword is that you want to use here in Massachusetts, and make sure that we are there ahead of where the industry is going so that we can continue to be the best. And why is that good? It's great for the local economy, it's great for jobs, it's great for all of us, but most importantly, you know, and I'm a little jacked up coming off of the Cystic Fibrosis Great Strides weekend. We crushed it this year. We're at an all-time high raising money for cystic fibrosis, and that's how I got into this industry, because my 12-year-old little guy has the disease. And, you know, what we do in this room is going to ultimately affect patients, not just here in Massachusetts, but patients in the world. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today as we talk about value. Value isn't just about making money off of a drug. Value is the impact it can have on a patient's life when where that intersects with pulling cost out of healthcare. Drugs aren't the expensive piece, but I don't want to keep talking about it. I get all excited. But I really just want to thank all of you guys, because the content that we develop for these forums is crucial. It's crucial. And we can't do that. We're not just going to do that in a vacuum here and think that it's important. I mean, we work for you. We need to know what that content is, but we can help produce it, and we can help integrate it, and we can help make sure that it's aligned with what this report is all about, and that's only going to make us get better. You know, so the best place in the world for innovation is only going to get better over the next 5 years. Are there any questions for me at all? I'm going to be here. I'm excited about it. If there's anything that comes up, let's just keep the dialogue going. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Am I missing anything?
No. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, so as I mentioned, now let's take a look at what has happened so far this year, which working groups have been represented, and what we've got in the pipeline. And then Sheila will go into her presentation about the Impact 2020 report. So, as you can see, there's been 16 forums that have happened this year. And so here are the working groups that have been represented. So whether the working groups individually put on one of these forums or collaboratively put on one of the forums. We've got a good number of events in the pipeline for the remainder of the year. And then we'll take a look at registration. But I think just to sort of underscore Bob's point, there's some gaps here that we really want to fill. When we did the restructuring process, feels like forever ago, but it was really just a little over a year ago, we decided that these working groups were really the appropriate groups to represent the segments of our membership. And it's very important that each respective working group puts on content for the constituents of our membership that have that area of expertise. So we want to make sure if there have been gaps, come to us. We could certainly, our senior management team can certainly sit down with you and brainstorm ideas if you need some help in that area. But we want to make sure that we get some content on the calendar for all the different areas of expertise and the touch points within our membership. All right, so now let's talk about attendance. So, the number looks a little bit low, particularly after the programming that we had last year. But I think that there's some reasons for this, and I think that there's some ways that we can improve this. So, as we know, this year we did, or the beginning of the year, we did a globalization series, a 4-part series. So this series, I think going into it, we knew this wasn't going to be of interest to as broad an audience as last year's series, Adventures in Biotech. Saying that, I think the programming we've put on in that series has been really, really excellent. I'm going to, John Hallinan has received some feedback about the series. I think what we strive for is obviously increased attendance, but also excellence in programming. And I think people have really thought that the caliber of speakers that we've brought in through this series has been really great. John, do you mind giving some feedback that you had on this series?
Yeah, I was at a meeting at Merck, and I ran into James Shirley of the Adult Stem Cell Center, and he had attended the Asia Forum and said that the value derived from that forum constituted the value that he gets from his membership, and he thought the content was great. He met a lot of great people, and he now knows what he has to do if he has to expand. And he really raved about the session in terms of the content that it provided to him and the direction that he needs to go. And I think that's what we try to strive for in these events. And I don't think that what did we get, 50, 60 people?
Yeah, so the room felt full.
Yeah.
And each one of those had a really nice dialogue
Yeah.
that was happening with the audience. And I think, so that would be achieving what our goal was for that series, I would argue. The other reason why the average attendance looks a little bit low is finally this year, a lot of our working groups gelled and they put on that standalone content. And so sort of to vet expectations, we knew that expertise-specific content wasn't going to generate a room of 100 people. But as long as that room has 20 to 50 of the right people, I think that that's a success for all of us. And we've done a little internal work on our end and attended some events in the area. And we're seeing that, you know, the attendance isn't huge. They're not getting rooms of 100 people, depending on what the content is. But having the right people is really the key. So this is where I think we can improve on this. I think the Forum Advisory Board can really help drive attendance, and particularly with the right groups. So the Forum Advisory Board was selected because of your sort of seasoned expertise and your broad-based network. So I think we could do a better job of tapping into the networks of our Forum Advisory Board. To give an example, Denise does an awesome job of tapping into her network and getting the word out there for each of the SEF events. Her company sends an email out to all of her contacts. We spend a lot of time and effort, and it was sort of based on feedback that we got from this group in creating a media package for each one of our forums. And Susan sends it out to everybody. So we try to make it as easy as possible to sort of translate that content, that information about the respective event, into something that you can, whether you send it out via your company to your contacts or you send a personal message to folks who you think, your colleagues that would be interested in that particular event. I think that's really critical in helping drive attendance and making sure that the people in the seats are the right people. Because we certainly heard feedback and some folks say, you know what, this particular event, there's been a lot of service providers. Well, service providers are part of the membership. So if we want to make sure we drive the right individuals into the seats, we all have to work together to make sure we get the message out there to the right people.
Excuse me. Is there room for, question, discussion, or that will be postponed till later because I have something to say? That's something.
Absolutely. We want to encourage an open dialogue, so please.
Okay, so that part is just open, right? Okay. I just want to say, as far as the attendance, from my own experience, I always struggling. I mean, in my network, there's a number of people who are interested in certain events, but since all the events, or most of the events, are limited to members only, I'm all the time struggling with that because people just telling me I'd like to go, and then I feel very uncomfortable to do that. I think there's a lot of room just to increase the attendance by, for example, giving our co-chairs the power to have invited our guests. I don't know, that limited the number. And then we know that a lot of the events are not booked up. It would just keep a certain portion of the reservation for non-members. I think it will can go a long way. First of all, we can fill the room with really interested people who make a difference, number one. And then that people who are not members could potentially be champions of bringing the organization to the membership. But a lot of people work for smaller companies, virtual companies, and I hear all the time, I'd like to go, but I'm not a member, unfortunately. But all this this 3, 4, 5 people that are really interested, they make a big difference in the whole event.
So
and this is movers and shakers. So if you guys can consider that, I keep saying that year after year after year. And I like something to change. I like to fill the room like 200 people. I think we can do that. But I think we cannot stay close like trade organization within ourselves. I think if we have a little bit more power, bring other people. They won't be.
Yeah, I think I think those are good points. I just think, being here for a number of years, I think MassBio does a great job at making things affordable for folks to join. So I would, kind of respectfully push back that there should be, maybe it's a dialogue of how you get folks that are between opportunities that are not necessarily affiliated with the MassBio anymore. That,
good catch.
That's how old I am. So, to enable them to participate, because I do agree we do miss some of those folks that are just for whatever reason, they're virtual or they're, like I said, between opportunities, there's no mechanism for them. But then, fair enough, I do think that MassBio does a good job at picking up the different companies based on size and that kind of thing, and giving them affordable memberships. So
Thank you.
I think they should be a member, you know.
So that's my argument, that's my pushback to that, is that it sort of dilutes the value for members who do pay membership dues. If we allow non-members to attend the very events that are core deliverables of membership. That being said, we did open up our sort of series forums to non-members to first nominal fee to attend. And in the circumstance that there's an individual who you think is the right, a good fit for this particular event, I know Susan's made definitely accommodations for those individuals to attend events. Additionally, as Brian mentioned, we do try to sort of tier the membership to make it affordable for different size members. And so for those virtual companies, we've actually created a solution for those companies as well who may only have 3 employees but still want to participate in the event. So if there's individuals who you think are a good fit, you just have to bring them to Susan's attention. And there's a definite possibility that they can attend that particular event. Will we allow them to attend events on a reoccurring basis without joining? No, we won't. But we will certainly make accommodations for people who you think are the right people to get into the seats for that particular event. And then there's going to be a little give and take because then they're going to have to hear a pitch about membership. But.
Yeah, and Alex, you bring up a great point, and there's been a tremendous amount of discussion at the board level just about how do we come up with a product for the virtual companies, because we're seeing more and more, and that's okay, but we really need to figure out how can we bring them into the organization without diminishing the value for other folks. But there has been a great deal of discussion. I guess what I would say, and I try to say to the team all the time, if there's folks that do not have the means or in some cases the desire to pay at a certain time and we feel that they should come to an event, we should go through Susan or Kendall or myself and make sure that we do get them into the room, because it's a great way to develop that relationship and turn them into a member. And we try to balance it, but I mean your point is very well taken, and I don't want you to think that we would ever want to shut people out, because we really don't. We just need to do it in a well thought out manner.
So I'm on the drug discovery committee. What I would say is a lot of our target audience are people that are thinking about being entrepreneurs or in the process or in transition. And so a lot of people that would get a lot of value out of our discussions, seeing examples of the other people successful, don't have a company, are thinking about it, or it's not involved in that. So my counter argument to this is that if you want to recruit and if you want to build your portfolio for next year, it's getting an avenue for these people to come, learn, become educated, and become successful, which is the goal of this organization. Because the more success we have with the companies in here, the more success we're going to have overall. So I'm not always going to know those people, right? They go, they see it, they sign up, but they can't get in. It's not like I can find them and bring them to you.
One other thing that we've done with the legal and regulatory group was we put an event together that celebrated 30 years of Orphan Drug Act, and we piggybacked our forum with celebrating Rare Disease Day at the State House. So people were already there, and we thought about attendance. It was what our primary focus, and we gathered first people who were relevant in the industry, but also they didn't have to travel separately for the event. So when you plan your events, make sure that there is a possibility of piggybacking into something that's already taking place.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that event was awesome. We had standing room only.
I was just going to add something to at least my opinion to this discussion, I should say. And I think it's just say when you invite people, if you will, for free, the co-chairs or whoever gets their ability to do so. Because in my experience, it tends to be the same people that want to show up time after time.
Correct.
So I'm not sure how well that's going to work. But at the same time, what group of people that Brian mentioned, the in-betweens, so to speak, I think a couple of things. I mean, this would be, MassBio would be a fantastic forum, is a fantastic forum for them, I should say, to stay connected. And I think that they really would have a desire to show up at a number of these events for that very reason. Like someone else said here, they don't necessarily have a company.
Right.
And of course, we have some of the meetings open for a nominal fee. So I would sort of suggest, if you will, or support to have whatever fee that is, even if it's not that very nominal, so that you make, so that you feel that you don't give away memberships for free, basically. Of course, they will never get like the purchasing consortium, which I think is one of the major reasons, for at least a number of people are members. So I mean, I would really, those in-betweens, they could really fill the room, and they really need someplace to
I agree with
go.
you on that, but I'm not playing devil's advocate, but we do often, if they reach out to us and they say, listen, we're here, we want to attend this event, I mean, we do make accommodations for them, but not on a reoccurring basis. So, to your point, a lot of the people who want to go are the people, right, and if we start to get into that, then we have people sort of taking advantage of the system. But we want to make sure that we enable folks who could really take advantage and benefit to participate. So I guess it's, if you come across folks, for now, if you come across folks who you think are a good fit, who may not be at a company and should be at a particular event, let us know. But it's a dynamic process, and we're sort of always working through it. And we meet monthly with our executive committee, and these are topics that come up on a reoccurring basis. So it's sort of not solely our decision, it's kind of a board-focused decision. And right now where we're at is where we're at, but we want to make sure that we are enabling people who need our help to get into the room.
And just one other thing on the flip side of that too, I'm still continually amazed about, a company as big as Shire, the folks that are clueless about MassBio.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm the Johnny Appleseed running around like, you're not aware of this committee or that committee. Folks come up, I want to grow my career, I want to get somewhere, and this resource, and it's no knock to MassBio. I think you guys do a fantastic job at reaching out and stuff, but I would argue there's so many folks that are legitimate members now that really aren't taking advantage of participating, and so how can we get them to the table and get them to these meetings?
Right, that's a great point. That's last year we developed the member engagement group here, and we rate their success. The metrics is the new contacts, new faces, new touch points within our existing company base, and we're actually measuring how that's growing, and it's amazing. And it was in the past, we'd have a contact with policy, a contact with purchasing, and a couple here and there.
Right.
But now it really is. We want to ultimately become the professional development arm, an HR arm, if not, if you would, for all of our member companies. And that's why this is all, it's where it all ties together.
But that's an excellent point, and that's why we need all of you to help be the champions within your organization. So I think we've mentioned this before in meetings, but if you'd like us to come in and do a lunch and learn for the employees of your company, we'd love to do that. Please reach out to me and let me know, and we'll set one up. And it's a really good avenue. It's quick. It's not painful. 20 minutes. We run through a presentation of what employees of your company can take benefit of, and they get pizza and soda, and it's really not that bad. I promise. It's not this long pitch, but it's a great way to educate those employees who have no idea about MassBio. We know they're out there, and it's an uphill battle, but we need you to help us get to them.
One idea on this is large companies are always looking for ways to grow. For example, they're more junior people, and some things that they do is they send them to these almost, instead of executive education program, but basically an education, management education program. Perhaps that's something that MassBio would be interested in doing, is putting together a training program where you would get some sort of a class, a lecture from each and every one of the organizations and the forums, and participate for a year. And after a year, after successful completion, you have to make sure you show up, then you do everything, and then after that you get the certificate, and then you're basically a management, some sort of a management certificate.
Sure.
And I think that's something that would be a way to get to people in those large organizations.
I think that's a wonderful idea, and that's the type of programming that we're hoping that we collectively can create. In the interest of time, I'm going to move to the next slide here.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I'm a new member on the HR side, and I've been involved when it was NBC back in the mid-90s as a vendor, as a service provider in the HR committees, and it appeared to be different at the time. And I came back here this time because I thought I wanted to try to get some more HR content and draw back some of the HR folks, and I know a lot of them. I know a ton of them, and there's a reason they're not here, okay? And I am the first to really appreciate service providers and vendors as long as they're participants, not aggressively selling.
I
Okay,
100%
and that,
agree
and
with
that
you.
there is canvassing going on. When you get 5, 6 people from one provider showing up and they canvass a room. And, you know, we may not be able to make a dent if you guys don't hear that. And I'm not saying limit the service providers, but if there's a code of ethics or something where people come to participate instead of sell, actively sell, I think that would go a long way.
How many service providers are in the room? Can you raise your hand?
We have 2 on our committee and they're awesome, right?
So it's really hard for us to manage that because we'd be excluding one of the co-chairs on your group if we were excluding.
I'm saying they're
service
great
providers.
participants.
I don't think it's about exclusion, it's about behavior.
Right.
It is.
You know,
It is
if you're
about
coming for
behavior.
professional development and to learn, I mean, you're not gonna, as a salesperson, you're gonna naturally grow your relationships over coffee and a bagel. You don't have to hammer people over the head.
So that's a really good point. And as, you know, the individual who oversees our purchasing consortium, I really try to make sure that the consortium suppliers don't do that. And if you see them doing that, let me know. But I think that probably we could try to do a better job of speaking to just general members who seem to be aggressive. And I'm happy to do that. So if there's, you know, we can talk offline, but if there's particular people who you think may be doing that, you can let me know.
I just wanted to add a comment from my perspective of having been co-chair of 2 committees. We managed that at a committee level. So we would see the registration and we had events where we would see 6 to 12 people from a specific company registering. And I would contact them and say, you know, what's your objective? This is not really a place to prospect with that many people. And that's how we managed it. Because we ran some very high profile events and in some cases we had standing room only and they willingly gave up seats. I think the abuse is limited. There's a couple.
Right.
It was always a couple firms.
But people remember it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so.
Yeah, it's an ongoing issue that we try to navigate. Rob, you had a point?
I have really little to add. I do think that there's little going on. I think you're right in reality, but I do think that when people see these forums, they kind of, a little bit of hesitation to show up is that they may be exposed to it. So putting it out front that this is a sell-free zone or this code of ethics exists in your market and forums may just be removing the excuse of the person to hit register because they think they're going to get a salesman.
Sure, yeah, I think that's definitely language that we can certainly
And
try
by
to
being a
incorporate.
participant, that's a form of selling,
Mhm.
probably at its best, right? People look at that.
Yeah.
Good, so that's great feedback,
That's a good
thank you, Lee. So just quickly, because I want to make sure Sheila has enough time. So, these are the events that have occurred, and I just sort of highlighted the events that had the largest attendance. The JP Morgan event was awesome, and these are the type of events that we knew were going to be really, really, you know, hot topics and resonate with a large crowd. So this has been so great that we're going to do a primer in November this year as well.
September.
Oh, September, sorry. Sorry, Susan's manages the calendar.
They're paying attention.
Can I just quickly point out, this slide is actually very telling. You can see that there is an inverse relationship between registration and attendance. There is about 2/3 of people who actually show up as compared to registration, right? The one that we put together, the last one.
We couldn't.
And because, and I will tell you that it probably was doubled.
I think
Because
so.
it was piggybacked to another event.
That was what I was going to
Yeah.
point out. This question mark doesn't mean there weren't a lot of people there. It means we couldn't account for them
Yeah, it's over
because
100.
there were.
There's a value
it was
of putting them together.
So just quickly again, and as suspected, the series, globalization series also had high attendance. And so then I just want to go over this slide very quickly. So I think it's imperative that the working groups work with Susan to create a standing monthly call. You'll see that there's a clear relationship between the groups that have the standing monthly call and what they've put on the calendar so far and what they have in the pipeline, and with the groups who don't have that. So I really want to encourage those groups who haven't yet put a standing monthly call on the calendar with Susan to do so, because I think it will really help create your pipeline. And John Halliday can speak to this again as a former co-chair.
Yeah, it's definitely a best practice, and people often ask me how I could be a co-chair of 2 committees and work 70+ hours per week. And the reason was I had excellent co-chairs who worked with me, and we kept in constant touch, and we developed a pipeline. As a matter of fact, with Entrepreneurs University, and Mark stepped in, and I sent him the database. So we had a list of topics that we wanted to cover, potential speakers, And also, a lot of the ideas came from attendees at our events. So they would come up afterwards and say, you should do an event on this. And in many cases, they would help us set up that event. And I've found over years of managing those two committees that it's easier to organize a couple events at a time than to do one-offs. So we always had parallel events in process.
And when you look at this slide, and the first slide that showed that there weren't any forums for specific committees, we're not trying to call anybody out. We're saying that we don't expect you to do all the work. We want to help do the work. So this is us asking you folks, tell us, what is it that we can do to help you so that we can get this done? And, the working group monthly call, that's great, but even before that, there were 3 committees, 3 forums up there that didn't have anything in the pipeline. Working groups, sorry. I didn't say NBC.
That's
I'm still stuck on that sometimes. When, we want to work with you to get this done. We're not calling anyone out. We're not saying you need to do the work. We just need your help with the content and your brain, and we'll do the physical labor.
I also want to add that it should be fun. In those 2 committees, it was the most fun I had. Work was like rolling a boulder up a hill, and it would roll back down on me. And this was sort of a release for me. And I had so much fun working with this guy and the other co-chairs of the BD committee, and Nils and Bob. And
was that more fun than working here full-time, John?
That's a loaded question.
Easy answer.
Bob makes this joke about he liked when he paid me better when I was a volunteer. I tell him he's paying back wages. But it's supposed to be fun, and if for some reason it's not, or it's just not clicking, I'd be happy to sit down with you and talk about how we maneuvered. I had in John Hessian and Chris Kennedy 2 incredible co-chairs, and we had steering committee, and we had help, and Mark stepped in and helped us a number of times, which is why he's elevated to the role. And I think, again, it should be fun. And if it's not, let me help you make it fun.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good point.
That's a great point.
And that's why we wanted to restructure.
Could you spend 10 minutes at the next meeting just presenting a case study or how you work or how you operate?
Sure, absolutely.
I think that's, the goal here is to educate, right?
Yeah.
And so if we educate ourselves on how to run these committees, for some of us, this is the first time.
Yeah, and I call on Brian and Bob and Nils too. A lot of it can be learned, and I tell people I'm not a scientist and I may be the dumbest person in the room, but if I can do it, then you can do it. But I'd be happy to share my experience.
All right. And then just quickly, this is what we have in the pipeline. I'm not going to go through these. Susan's going to send out these materials, so take a look and see what other groups are doing, and maybe that will help spark an idea with your group. Or maybe you think, gee, I could offer some assistance or expertise to one of these particular topics, and I'm sure that working group would be happy to collaborate with you. So, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sheila from Health Advances.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
No.
It's on there. It's on here?
It's already open. It's open, Kendall and Bob.
Perfect.
All right. Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sheila Heisey. I'm a partner at Health Advances, one of the, hopefully, as Bob mentioned, one of the consultants that comes in to do the 5-year strategic plan, and we had the pleasure of working with the MassBio team.
Were you here when I said it was really expensive?
Yes, I was here.
I didn't mean that, sorry.
It's a little negotiation.
I heard. No, but we had a fantastic experience of working with the team and putting together the Impact 2020 report. I am not going to be presenting the whole report today. That's on the MassBio website. But I do want to highlight the recommendations and the messages we heard around value. Sorry about that. I think it was a robust process. We spoke to over 100 stakeholders in the membership across sectors. We even talked to providers and payers. and really heard a lot of great things about the cluster. The cluster is doing fantastic. I think Massachusetts is probably stronger than ever before in any of the previous reports. And now that we've set some recommendations, now the hard work begins, right, Bob? Now we're going to be implementing this, and there are some insights in here that could help with planning some of the events moving forward, and particularly around value. No surprise, value was one of the biggest issues we grappled with in this report. And you'll see what our vision that we laid out to advance Massachusetts leadership in the life sciences industry, recognizing that we're at such a special place right now. We want to advance that leadership, championing innovation in order to bring value to the global healthcare system and make meaningful impact on patients' lives. That's our vision statement. And you can see the key recommendations that came out of that. And I want to focus on this first one, demonstrate the value of innovation for the healthcare system and ultimately for patients, because that was really the number one issue, regardless of whether we were talking to big pharma, early startup company, even investors, even providers. Hey, everyone was grappling with this issue, and there's a lot of debate around how much are we paying for this technology? We can't keep dealing with these rising costs. And the problem with that is that as that debate is ongoing, I think the messages around what ultimately technology does for patients and some of the great things that have happened here in Massachusetts gets lost. And what we recognized is MassBio has such a unique role to speak on behalf of industry and to convene stakeholders across the table, whether it's payers, providers, and industry, to really dialogue together. Because right now, what we saw in our research is that payers will not engage in dialogue with industry unless it's a cross-negotiating table for one product. But there has to be a higher level dialogue, because otherwise we're not going to figure out what's the best way to pursue payment for technologies under a value-based system, under capitated models, fee for risk, fee for value. All these issues are out there, but there's not enough cross-sector dialogue going on.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, that's exactly what I was going to touch upon, Sheila. What made this study unique and really a first of its kind is we engaged the hospital presidents, and we had Jim Roosevelt from Tufts, Dreyfus from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Eric Schultz from Harvard, Pilgrim. They had to come to the table. It was mandatory. And MassBio, we were kind of like Switzerland, We pulled everybody together, and the question was, okay, healthcare reform is a reality on a national level. We're leading the way in Massachusetts, just like we did with Healthcare Reform 1. Now we're going with the cost containment piece. Those three parties, the innovators, the providers, and the payers, have never gotten together to solve problems. Instead, we've tried to make the legislative folks benefit one at the expense of another. If we all want to succeed and show value in healthcare, we all got to get together and solve these problems together. And it can be done. And this report is a result of that. And, I was in New York last week. We're going down to DC next week. We're pitching it to the Life Science Center today. We've gotten international coverage with it. This is really going to lead the way to show that we are part of the solution of the rising cost of healthcare when we put our minds together. So it's pretty exciting.
It's very exciting. And what we're trying to do is change the conversation, because you've all seen these headlines and they're controversial. But if only this voice is being heard, you can see one of our Impact 2020 advisory board members, Professor Sato, said the greatest threat to our cluster is a diminished reward for innovation. And if healthcare reform undermines that incentive, this cluster could disappear. I mean, that was really remarkable, because what we built here is so strong, but it's also so fragile. That's what you often say, and it's very true, because if there's questions around, is this product going to get reimbursed, you're doubling down now. Not only is there risk with the science, there's risk with reimbursement, investors, and this is why we've seen VC dry up. It has far-reaching repercussions. And when we spoke with industry as part of this report, it was fascinating to see how much MassBio came up, and I think that's a tribute to how much this organization has grown and the leadership it's taken on. You can see some quotes here. Large biotech said, we need help in public education so that industry is not painted as big bad green pharma. And that's always been, we've had image issues for a long time, but right now it's so important to tackle them when you have legislators making legislation around payment for technologies. And MassBio can help. MassBio can help by educating, by engaging, and helping people understand what's involved across the value chain, what's involved with early science? You know, what does it take to bring a drug to market? What are the jobs that are created as you're discovering new drugs? Once a drug gets to market, who are the patients that benefit? And so constantly communicating those messages is such a valuable role that this organization can play. And there's also this idea that, you know, I think forums and events that bring together payers, providers, industry. I think of the policy breakfast you guys did earlier this year, which is a huge hit. And I think continuing to have events like that, that's bringing people that don't normally operate in the same room together to talk about these, talk about value. What does it mean? How do you define it? What kind of data are you looking for, payer X, Y, or Z? And especially for the small biotechs, and that's where I think a lot of programming for even startups, even early stage companies that are dealing with preclinical science, what we've heard more and more is that these companies just need to learn to speak payer. They need to have that kind of insight and understanding so early on, because if they don't, they're not even able to move forward in development. And they need to plan extremely early to develop that evidence that they're going to need eventually, even when they're having partnership discussions in phase 1. So you'll see there's several recommendations that came out of the value section, and they are around the different themes of convening groups, advocating, and programs and events. And around programs and events, we really think it would be valuable to establish what we call a value resource center. So this is a resource center that early stage companies, like I mentioned, can reach out to just understand the fundamentals of reimbursement in the US, even internationally. What's ICWIC? A lot of companies don't know what that means. So having secondary resources, having a network of consultants that these companies can reach out to get early education would be immensely valuable. We also say, so let's develop value-based training and education for these companies. So continue to have speakers, continue to have panels that talk about different ways to address evidence requirements early in development, maybe case studies and how certain companies got favorable recommendations with European payers. So there's I think there's a lot of material there that you can use to really educate your members. And we also, you know, this may not seem like a big issue, but I think it is. And this is highlighting more of these patient successes and opportunities. I don't think we recognize enough what we do. I think sometimes industry gets into a reactive mode, but there's some fascinating patient stories. And I sometimes see whenever I visit companies that I see the lobbies and these great patient stories, and more of that needs to just get out there and communicated. And I think we can do that through forums. To bring patients to these forums, have them talk about their experiences. I think the more we do that and change the dialogue, it's going to help industry, it's going to be able to educate legislators, and it's so critical right now in this time. So those are the key messages I wanted to highlight. Like I said, there's a report with all of our recommendations, but this issue was a very critical one, and I think it's one that we can have a tremendous impact. Happy to entertain questions or give more background. Or Kendall, if you want to.
Oh, I think Bob has some additional color to add.
No,
I'm just talking about value.
Well, the whole value piece, when you think about it, when you go back to the payers, the providers, and the innovators, when you get these folks in the room, you say, okay, what is the common denominator? What do we all care about? If you're a doctor or a payer or someone who's a research scientist, what do you care about? You care about the patient. So if we take all of these issues and wrap them around the patient and do what's best for the patient, we will succeed, in a sense. And that's when value comes up, because we've said innovation, 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 innovation. If you did a marketing study on what comes to people who are payers, when they think of innovation, they think expensive. Who the hell, I mean, that's crazy. Innovation to me has always been, that's something that's good. It's disruptive, it changes life, it's good. Innovation really doesn't have a good, it's not associated with things that are positive to people who are gonna create access. So then you go to access. When you think about the small companies that are coming up with this science, if there isn't gonna be access, there's really no sense in doing it. And you're not going to get the access of that drug unless someone is going to be convinced that there's value and they'll pay for it. So let's build it earlier on. When you talk about a value resource center, it could be something as simple as taking our innovation services group and Mass Connect and building in that value component early on. So when you put the 10 slides together around this asset or this technology or piece of old innovation. How do you wrap the value and define the value before you even go any further? And yes, Talia.
So, a few comments first. I read the whole report and I really enjoyed it. You guys did a really good job.
Can you
And
speak up just a little more?
I was speaking about the report, that I read it last night and I really enjoyed it. So
You did your homework, you read
well,
Well,
you know,
thank
if
you,
it
thank
will
you.
not be interested, I will not read it.
Thank you.
And I want to speak about the innovation and physician and expensive. And you guys also touch upon as education. Education, education, education. From the school to basically the physician, and that's missing. It's missing, I believe, big time.
It's missing in the report?
No, it's missing
In the industry. Yeah.
Okay.
It's missing. It's missing. You know, physicians think about expensive because they don't know enough about this innovation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's now as far as the healthcare provider. I was in several groups which they participate, and I think we need to have the right people from the healthcare provider to participate in the forums that they can take it forward. Because if you have people which don't understand what we're trying to do, they will not bring the message into their organization. And that's happening.
Mhm.
So that's another thing that, how to do it, I think.
And that's a great point. I'll even tell you, we spoke with several hospital CEOs locally, and some of them, to your point, said, we're dealing with so many of our own problems, just consolidation to be able to provide care under lower and lower reimbursement and tighter margins, that I don't have time to dialogue with industry and do these experiments, So you're absolutely right. But on the other hand, one of our advisory board members was Gary Gottlieb of CEO Partners. And I was impressed with how, he said, of course I have to think about this. Of course I need to talk to industry because we need to figure this out. So I think you're absolutely right. And I think finding those the champions within providers who are willing to step up and dialogue in a very public way is going to be very important. So.
One thing would be an idea is perhaps for next year we could have a forum series where we do go through the whole valuation chain, right? When you start out, you could partner up, EU, for example, finance, regulatory could all partner up, and other groups as well to put together a forum series where you start from the beginning. Let's say EU starts saying, well, what are the things that you need to think about, right? How long is your pipeline once you get a patent? How long does it actually take you to develop a drug? How much do you have left? How much do you want to, at the end of the day, charge for it? And what's going to be the cost? And would the payer be willing to pay for it? And will there be interest? And also in the middle, I think sometimes that doesn't get talked about is competition and what's out there for different types of drugs and in different types of areas. So for example, if you're developing a cardiovascular product, you have to also understand what's already out there in terms of the cost, right? Will the healthcare provider be interested in your particular drug if there's something out there already or something in the pipeline that's further along? So some of these things, sometimes small biotechs don't think about. Yeah. And that goes directly to the cost. My other point though also is I'm a little hesitant to step away from innovation. I think what we have here in Massachusetts is that, and there's actually an article in the New York Times just this morning about what makes Silicon Valley, and why is it that we cannot replicate Silicon Valley? And it's good that we cannot, because at the end of the day, we want to create our own valley for biotech. And we want to concentrate and we want to be out there in the world and saying, this is where those conversations happen, this is where, and even if you are from Blue Cross Blue Shield, you are from Washington, you want to come here and have those dialogues at MassBio, because this is where not just innovation, but only single biotech innovation, this is what we're really good at. Yeah. All the other tech stuff, you can go to New York and Silicon Valley. So I don't want to take too much of a step away from innovation, because I think what we have here is really great, and this is a way also to lure in these people to come here and have that dialogue.
That's great.
I completely agree, because we're going to keep saying this is the best place in the world for innovation. We're all over that,
well,
but when it comes to the
we spoke with
pain.
California, and they're saying, how come we can't do Kendall Square?
Yeah.
So I think your point's well taken, but maybe it's just, how do we keep that innovation, not make it, with payers, innovation,
Yeah.
it's not equal cost, you know, I think
Well,
that's.
that's right. And also, in terms of the patient, I mean, some things that you could also do is, everybody is into running, right? And there's a lot been out there about lung cancer, how nobody cares about lung cancer, it's all about breast cancer. I mean, you could sometimes get together with some of these initiatives where lung cancer actually kills more people with breast cancer, and there's not that much innovation in lung cancer. I mean, that's one thing that you can do, is have a lung cancer running. You can have a lung cancer survivor that's running, something where you can maybe put together some sort of a competition where you have not just a panel. I think it's a wonderful idea to have on a panel a patient participating, but also a patient participating, showing them they're healthy and they actually benefited from all these wonderful drugs that are also very cheap at the end of the day. Who knows?
I love it.
Magically.
Yes, hi. Actually, I agree with you 100%, but I was wondering, like, we are not the only cluster facing this kind of challenge. I'm sure that others around the country as well as in the world. Have you done some kind of benchmarking to understand what is it that we do not offer that other clusters may, or how can we improve what we offer so that we, first of all, maintain our survival rate, as well as then we continue to expand and innovate as we are. So I'm worried more about, like, from the statement that was there, that this cluster may disappear overnight. That's like, like you have a 30-year organization that may be facing some kind of an, end of life kind of a scenario, which is in all scenarios is bad no matter what. So.
No, that's a good point. And we did do the kind of the benchmarking exercise. That was the first phase of our research. And you're not seeing a lot of that because on a lot of dimensions we were doing very well.
Okay.
There are areas where California, if you look at California as a whole, it brings in more NIH funding, but we have more NIH funding than per capita basis, for example. So we really looked at each dimension and found that we were either number one or number two. We were doing really, really well. Now that said, we still said, well, there's some lessons we can learn. There's a lot of neat things going on in these other clusters. So for example, in New York, you're seeing more and more public-private partnerships, philanthropists and city agencies coming together to really try to make New York more of a biotech hub. Tom Maniatis is out there, right? Now he moved to Columbia, and he's saying, why can't I make a Kendall Square here? So there's deep pockets in New York. So we said, well, we should look at that and see, can we attract those pockets here? Why try to recreate a Kendall Square? Come here. We looked at Seattle. Seattle, they're known more, Novo Nordisk really liked Seattle and set up a research hub there because they felt like there's more cooperation in Seattle between providers and industry. And here, the providers are strong, but they don't always cooperate. And we don't, have a strong reputation there, or and what they call co-opetition. So we said, well, can we learn there? We look internationally. There's China, $500 billion plan to build the next biotech hub. So we said, well, we better start making broken relationships with China. So, so that we try to bring them here and bring some of that money here. So we did look at a lot of different, and some of that's in the report as well.
That's great because it also seems like there's an image problem as well. So we need to develop more clearly, and that's why we're here today to develop more content. But also like to have a outreach arm, basically raise the image generally in the public as well as in the industry as well. So.
And the reason why we, your point that this threat is a global threat, but we said, well, if we're the leading cluster, we need to be attacking global threats. The leader should be able to lead the way, right? And the leader has the most to lose with global threats. So that's the justification for why we're focusing so much on
that. So I'm a softie in the room, and this is awesome. Bravo to your team at Health Advances at MassBio. I mean, I won't forget the first time I met you, Bob, when you talked about your boys. It's real. And I know that drives everything. You talk about it every time, and I know it's not just a piece to your story, you mean it. And when we do these programs, building it in is so important, building the patient in. So 2 comments. I was at Faster Cures last year, and there's a bunch of farmer people in the room, and Bonnie, and I always forget her last name, but she runs the Lung Cancer Foundation. She's a Lung Cancer Foundation. And she said exactly what the lady over here was saying was, why don't you have patients on your board? She pretty much looked at everybody in the room and said, if you're at a pharma, if you're at a biotech, and you're working on a drug, put the patient on your board. They should be part of the decision-making process. And in our own little world, we live and breathe that. But I made a mistake yesterday. Held a meeting downstairs with 8 pharmaceutical companies and 12 academics, and we were looking at biomarkers. And put out a press release. Look at all this awesome collaboration. My phone started to ring. Who called? The patient. We didn't have a patient. So, I mean, it's just it's so easy to do and make sure that we do it. And maybe we challenge ourselves in our programming going forward. Whenever we give a company the honor of presenting at MassBio, that we ask them, put a comment in your deck from a patient. Prove to me that you've talked to your consumer. Because if they don't have that credibility, we shouldn't give them the chance to sit up there and talk to us.
That's such a great point.
And it's such a critical theme of the the entire report, really.
Yeah, that's why.
Patient-centric.
It's the elephant in the room.
Yeah, and I think you just captured that last, we try to put out these messages to the policymakers, and we say, always have a patient there. If we're
It's something that all of us can take
what's
as a
patient?
pledge. I mean, if we went around the room and I asked you, do you have a patient on your board? If you're working for a company, we're all working for companies trying to kill disease. Do you have a patient on your board?
Absolutely.
Maybe that's something that we look at as a group
Absolutely.
to walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Yeah, and I know disease foundations have become a fast-growing part of their membership, and I think that's one, but I love the idea of just having a patient on the board. It's a great idea.
That was it?
That was it.
Thank you so much,
Well, do you have any
Sharon.
other questions,
And this can be part of the dialogue, because in the next 40 minutes, I want to spend some time thinking about what a forum series in the fall around value would look like. Luba, you hit on a lot of the points that we want to address, so that's perfect. You can sort of maybe spearhead the conversation.
And just keep in mind that Impact 2020, we just touched upon it with one little topic. Those 4 areas that we need to focus on, the other 3 are very exciting as well, outside of the value one. And what I try to remind the staff here at MassBio and our board is that, we got 5 years to do it. It's not all going to happen overnight, so this is going to be an ongoing dialogue, and we're going to continue to try to implement a lot of the recommendations that came from the report.
So that being said, I think, we'd really like to be able to see maybe a 3-part series in the fall around value. I mean, it can be whatever we decide it will be, but John Hallinan and I, in our senior team, sat down last week to kind of brainstorm of what we think maybe a series would look like. And we think that, this theme is really critical to every single person in the room, and every single person within our membership. Everyone's a stakeholder. But does everyone understand what value is?
Can I comment on that? When we were doing the study and we met with all the different, stakeholders, I'm using consultant speak, Sheila. I went into the meeting, value to me was, okay, how can it improve my son's life and make him live longer? Like meaningful, breakthrough, treating underlying cause, not just another antibiotic. Where's the value, And that was me. If there were 8 different people in the room, there was 8 different opinions of what value actually is. And I don't expect that to be any different here. That's why we have to have the discussion, because value may mean something a little bit different through that whole continuum of care, or through the business cycle. We used to say from bench to bedside. Where is that? We're thinking of so many different things now outside of bench to bedside. We're thinking of access. We're thinking of breakthrough, not just another Me Too drug, something that's different, breakthrough, something that's going to have a dramatic impact on improvement on a patient's life. And they threw the Kaleido thing up there. Kaleido costs $280,000, $290,000 a year. They got approved by everybody right away. The only people that didn't approve of it were media outlets because it was so expensive. But it's real easy to show that that drug is a lot cheaper than the current cost for a CF patient, and never mind throwing in a double lung transplant at the end of the day. So, that there's value there. So those are the type of things that, we think with this value series. I thought that the adventures in biotech around the world was great. I think with the help of the folks in this room, we can come up with a 3-part series that really hits upon value in a way that everybody who works at our member companies can get something out of one of those 3 parts.
Yeah, one comment. I think that you touch upon, the report touch upon. The number 1 value is the patient. So, and I think from there we started to derive really how can we build the new therapy, the innovation. We have to remember we are going to continue the innovation. If not, there is no reason for us to be here. So I think that, if I may, I would put the patient on top of everything and then see how from a patient point of view, it doesn't have to be somebody who has a terminal disease and cardiovascular. How many people are treated in this country for type 2, cardiovascular, and so forth? So why don't we think about an idea, okay? Starting from the patient, going down in the different form. I think that might help as far as driving us not only to think about the different part that you have here, but also who should we bring to the table.
Yeah, so this is just for conversation purposes to get the thought started. I think that bringing the patient into everything, the report really reflected that, is what we need to do in all of our programming. Every conversation we have, the patient needs to be at the core of that. Luba.
Yeah, I think patient is great, but I don't know if we necessarily want to start with the patient. I think, again, we want to think about how do these things get started, right? So I envision the first series would be, first is, how do you, if you are at a university, you are a student or you're a professor, how do you, first of all, partner with the university? And also from the university's point of view, do you want to hold on to this patent or do you want to license it out, right? So it's kind of that. And then the value goes into there. How do you value it, right? Do you really think this is going to be a success, or is it better to license out a bunch of stuff and then eventually get a royalty at the end, right? So what is the value to the university? What is the value to the scientist that's within university or hospital, right? So you kind of, because we have so many stakeholders here from the hospitals and universities, and this is kind of the thing that you think about. Then you think patent, right? Everything starts with a patent. This is where a regulatory group can also come in. This is the life of your patent. Here in the United States, you can also get patents in other places, right? So here you talk about patents, the life of the patent, where you can get a patent, that discussion. Also, regulatory can also say, one on average, how long would it take you to develop this product? And then after that, you can get to that competitive analysis part, right? Which goes to the patient, which is exactly as you were saying, is how many patients are out there that have this? How many other companies out there that have this? Where are they in their stage of development? Sometimes what I see when I speak to entrepreneurs is they say, this is so innovative, nobody else has it, right? At Pfizer, whenever we look at something that's usually first or second stage of development, there are 5 or 6 other small companies all over the world that are doing almost exactly the same thing. And sometimes when you speak to these companies, they say, no, we're the only ones, this is how we do it. And you speak to another, well, we use this and we don't use, we use our development in a different way, we manufacture a different way. At the end of the day, again, to the stakeholder, which is potentially the one that's going to manufacture and maybe acquire, there'll be a strategic partnership. They all somewhat look the same, so you really need to think about that competitive analysis, what's out there, how important is this drug, and at the end of the day, how much all of this. So this is kind of the progression that I see. You start with a patent, you start with who you would partner with, do you want to partner or not, and then eventually moving slowly to the actual making of the product and being
So that's where I think this comes in, and that might be what John was going to hit on here.
You've just identified a huge gap in the marketplace because a lot of these small companies, and we're not building fully integrated pharma biotech companies anymore around here. Many of them are virtual, they have incomplete teams, they need a lot more support, which is why these forums are so important. But a lot of them lack the ability to do that sort of competitive intelligence. And we have to teach them how, because they're in for a rude surprise. Many of them are lurching from milestone to milestone. They're getting tranche financing. And when we have our Pharma Days series, and that is really designed to connect the large pharmas with the innovative companies, we see a lot of those small companies, they put a package together and it's missing that data. That's what we need to fill in. And this topic is so broad, it's going to impact every company, going to impact every employee, and it's really going to impact the cluster, because if you think about, we are the top life sciences cluster in the U.S., and we're not forming those fully integrated biotechs that really served as a foundation for what we built over 35 years. We have the most to gain or lose, and we're going to gain if we teach people, as Sheila and I talked, how to speak payer and how to think about it early on in the process. You don't wait till you get to phase 2. Because that's too late.
That's right. And then also, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just before I forget, a good example of this, a good case study would be brown fat. So this is a new thing, right? And brown fat is out there, everybody will be super thin and everybody will be super healthy. The payer doesn't really care about obese people, the payers care, and we all care about sick obese people, right? We care about diabetes and heart disease and things that really impact people. So if you are there in a brown fat area, you should really think about, well, what are you trying at the end of the day to cure, right? I mean, what's the point, right? At the end of the day, what's your game plan at the end? So here's where you really think, okay, is it diabetes your end goal, or is it another something you advertise in Mass magazine? You know,
that's fantastic.
it's a magic pill, right? So it could be a good example to really illustrate to them. Here's what a real patient really needs. A real patient, diabetes child.
I just want to say, I think you bring up a really good point, because I think there's these macro issues, but I think what you're illustrating is, but when you get down to the early science, there's some there's some day-to-day decisions, like how do I articulate the value of this patent? How is this IP more differentiated than that IP? And I like how you're saying, well, we need to think about how the broad theme kind of tie back to those discussions very early on. And maybe if there's more pressure in the market, does that have repercussions all the way back? So now that your bar is much higher, you know, people can come to you and say, look at my IP, but you know, your threshold is so much higher in the market that it's going to be harder for those companies. So I think that's a great point. I think the way you guys have laid it out is, let's talk about those macro issues and then drill it down to the early science.
So, you know, I kind of agree with you more. I did it several times. That's the drug discovery process. But I go back to the patient, because you said bench to the bedside. I would say bedside to the bench and back to the bedside. So the beginning is always the patient, because if you are not thinking about the patient, and now is the whole sequencing, and I'm not going to go into this, but that's what we're doing today. That's the innovation. How you're going to target something that the patient have today, and then basically in the bedside, and go back to the patient. So that's the beginning. As far as I'm concerned, that's the beginning. Everything else is basically derived from what you are going to develop. Some new treatments, some new compound, whatever, biologic, for the patient. So my starting point, at least my philosophy, is the patient, and then we develop.
But I think the patient could be tied in as a stakeholder, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
say no.
Okay.
So where I was getting to, it seems that most of this is complementary. So it might be important up front to go back to what you were saying about the value chain, to define that ecosystem or that value chain, so that these pieces aren't isolated, and that we understand, and I'm not sure myself who the audience will compose of, we understand their perspective, and we understand how to fit their perspective into everything we'll be discussing further along, and make sure we do that up front.
Right, so that sort of would fall into that overview idea. And Luba, would you mind being perhaps one of the leads on this?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do that.
Sounds like you have some great ideas. And anyone else who thinks that they could provide some color around this. And this can look, you know, whatever we think it needs to look like, but I think the basic starting point is we need to educate people on starting to think this way, because people aren't thinking this way.
If I could just add one thing to this, because I absolutely agree with you. I think it's all about audience. And in my experience going to JP Morgan or otherwise, I'm always surprised. And I don't know why I'm continually surprised when we sit across the table, just how interested venture capitalists or angel investors or big pharma innovators are. And you just started your conversation saying, this is how this is going to change a patient's life. So I get what she's saying down here about patents and whatever, but I've sat across the table from people that it is their job to buy the patent, to bury it. You know, so that's their value, is to hide that technology so it never gets out, because they have a competing product. So I do think audience is really, really important on defining value. So I don't know if you want to target this series towards like defining value for a product. We were talking about service providers, there are HR values and biostat values. It's kind of hard.
Yeah, I think, so John, you have some sort of idea about a little more about who our target audience would be for this, right? Because you are working to create some additional best practices programming around this. Do you want to give the group a little color around that?
Yeah, I think that especially if you look at the MassBio membership, the small companies that really are the nucleus, and that is why all the big pharmas are coming here to get access to that sort of innovation. And I see across that ecosystem that there's a real lack of knowledge and thinking that's going on about value at any sort of level. And part of it is capital formation crisis. Money is hard to come by. They don't have the complete teams, and they're relying on MassBio more and more. My phone rings quite a bit. And so I think that is the real target audience in the beginning, but in reality, it's going to impact all of us. And for all of you that are service providers that are providing services to those companies, the fact is that you have much fewer shots on goal just because of what's happening in the venture capital market. So if you look at the number of companies that are being funded, it's greatly reduced from about 5 years ago. So we're all dependent on those companies, not only for making us the #1 life science cluster, but for the business, for all the people that are around here. And so if we look at them as the place where that value is going to make the most impact, but in reality, it's everybody. This is extremely important, and it's the future of the cluster is going to be based on this.
And that kind of goes to, sorry, again, that is my understanding of who the audience is here, is smaller biotech companies, and again, entrepreneurs, and going back to what we're trying to create here, is we're trying to create a real, true Silicon Valley for biotech. I can tell you, there's so many consultants, law firms, investment banks, venture groups that can teach you how to be a patent troll, right? It's really not that complicated. You do your market research, you see who's out there, you see what you have, and then pharmaceutical companies and law firms and investment banks do this on a daily basis. They don't need any help in that. And obviously that is a very important point to cover during some of these forums, is that, again, the reason why market research is important is because you want to see who your competitors, and the fact that at some point you might come across a patent troll that might want to just buy you, give you very little money. And this is what they're doing, and it's going to be up to you. Do you want to cash out at this point, or do you want to continue given what else is out there? So that is a very important point to make. But again, how to do that, there are tons of consultants that can help you do that. But it's really for smaller biotech companies, for scientists here. We're next to MIT. You can see Novartis, Pfizer, Big Pharma is partnering up with MIT, partnering up with Harvard, partnering up with local hospitals, universities. They need that guidance. They're not in the business of patent troll.
And you brought up a great point about the academics, all of them across the river at the academic medical centers. We are #1 per capita NIH funding. And if you look at the output that gets out from that NIH funding, sooner or later, I believe that they're going to focus in on all this money coming in and saying, what are we getting out of it? And we see a lot of these academics come into our Mass Connect mentoring program, and they make great progress. One of the things that we teach them is we provide some industry DNA and some mentoring around this whole value equation. I think that that's another part of the audience as well, because those are the future entrepreneurs. Bio estimates that over 70% of the biotech companies around the U.S. came out of NIH funding. So the origins of the industry are in NIH funding. So that's one area where we have to do a better job. And in regard to Mass Connect, Olivia, you and I have talked about that. The problem with Mass Connect is we can take 12 per year, and we get 4 times as many applicants.
Niels, did you have to talk?
Yeah, I was going to say this, speaking of value, the value drivers, again, I should say, looking at various disease areas, I should say, differ quite a bit. And if you look at anti-infectives, antibiotics, I should say, where we're basically expecting to pay a couple of $100 tops.
Right.
Which of course is something that Cube is, I guess, a bit suffering from in terms of since it's not necessarily that much less expensive to develop an antibiotic, which of course if you treat somebody that would die, they might live 40, 50 years. And on the other side of the spectrum, we're willing to pay $100,000 to extend the life with 3 months, if you look at the payers are, I should say, if you look at oncology. And of course, though, that huge difference, first of all, is there any way we can correct that, which I think is going to be difficult, or change it, just might be a difficult topic. But it definitely puts completely different pressures. It makes the drug development so very different in those are just 2 areas, maybe on the 2 extremes.
And that's where I think, this sort of falls into this slide here. If we focus on the science and we talk about the importance of that, and some companies that have had success with that in implementing that thought process early, and others that haven't.
Right, and of course also what we're looking at doing today is going to be on the market maybe 12, 15 years. If you look back a bit, rare diseases, nobody thought you could do that. 10 years ago, 8 years ago, people were saying personalized medicine, never, we will segment the patient, we can't do blockbusters. Today, rare diseases, personalized healthcare, precision medicine, whatever you call it, that's where we all are going. So can we really predict what the value will be by the time these new technologies come to them? I don't think we can, but it's
I
an
don't know if
interesting
it's about
topic to
predicting it, but
discuss.
it's about thinking about it right at the onset, so you create a value proposition that the payers will buy into, right?
Payers, and also if you're looking to partner with big pharma, they're going to look for something in that data package that's going to tell them, yes, there's some value that's going to occur, and we can get it as we take it across the finish line. And in most of the pharma days that we have, when they have these one-on-one meetings with the small companies, we hear from a lot of the pharmas, the stuff that we see, we just don't believe. It's complete fiction. And it goes back to that issue of the biotech companies don't really have the ability to do it yet. But it's an area that we can teach them, because if you look around this room and around the cluster, there are experts in that area. We just need to connect the entrepreneurs, the future entrepreneurs, to those experts.
John, I have a question about the MassConnect, which I can say really terrific program. And you said that you can only take 12. Why can't MassBio do 24?
Well, we're looking to expand the program, and one of the recommendations in the 2020 report is that we expand. And so we are in the process of doing that. But I would tell you that even if we could take 24, it's not enough, because we see this incredible amount of innovation that we get access to at Harvard and Tufts and MGH and MIT, and we've demonstrated over the past 4 years the value that we create in those programs. So we get first shot at some very interesting technologies, and Mike Henry was here, and he's been a mentor, and he talked about this cycle was probably the best ever, and every cycle we get increasing quality. And another thing that Rakshita and I did to supplement MassConnect is we launched the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs last year. And that's more healthcare focused, but it's also a way to connect entrepreneurs with the resources that they need. And we launched it because we knew that there was a limit to what we could do with MassConnect, and we weren't accessing all of the innovation. And for anybody who's interested, we're having a meet on June 19th at the IBM Innovation Center. It's going to be on big data opportunities in healthcare. Attendance is free, thanks to Lana and her colleagues. They're sponsoring it. We're going to have Watson demos, so if you want to understand how Watson is going to replace you in your job. If you're interested,
Very comforting.
send me an email or give me your card, and I'll put you on the email list. Registration is limited to about 125, and so I would recommend, if you're interested, please sign up. But again, that's another vehicle for us to address this tremendous amount of innovation that we have here.
So I just want to bring it back to make sure that we're talking about this here.
So I wanted to address number 2 here, so clearly with CRO, CMO working group being there. So I'm thinking from the perspective of a manufacturer. I'm not thinking in terms of discovery or patent, but like say if I'm a patient and I'm paying $300,000 per year for a drug, if I could get that drug at a 90% cost, that's $30,000 less. That's value in my opinion, and I think manufacturing can do that. I think the manufacturing folks should be involved in trying to bring the cost of goods down. There are scale-up technologies out there now in academia and industry where there's no need to be manufacturing at 1,000 kilogram scale. We're not making Tylenol, Advil, Motrin kind of drugs. We're making very specific breakthrough therapy drugs, in which case we don't even need to be above a 10 kilogram scale. So there's knowledge out there that needs to be tapped into to reduce the cost of goods. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm happy to lead the part 2, and one of the things I was thinking is a strategic fit between CRO, CMO, and the regulatory group with the intent to reduce regulatory burden for breakthrough therapies.
Absolutely.
So
That's perfect.
sign me up.
Yeah, and there's a piece in Impact 2020 that talks about the utilization of contract services to reduce the cost of inventing a drug.
Absolutely. If it goes down by 10%, everybody wins, right? Like, why would you pay more for any drug?
Exactly.
Like, so.
And so that's why I think, I mean, again, we just propose these buckets, but we want to make sure that we're talking about these areas and these issues.
I think, and to your point, we also highlight just how it's amazing how much biomanufacturing we have here in Massachusetts, if that's not well known globally. And as we get into even more specialized therapies, cell therapies, you know, I think this is where a lot of breakthrough manufacturing processes will happen.
Absolutely. Like, you know, if you look at it, like, you know, the amount of computational modeling that is out there now, there should be no reason to be actually manufacturing any drugs experimentally. You could do a lot of in silico analysis to get you to a very good starting point, and then you go from there. That reduces the actual investment, although there's upfront cost. And we at Takeda have recently made some strategic investment into our own pipeline. So I'm happy to you know.
Thank you.
So.
One thing that does concern me a little with part 1 and part 3 is I want to make sure that we're at a high enough level that we're not talking about, my background's, I'm a patent attorney by training. Even I don't want to attend a meeting that's about patent valuation. I think that kind of drives down the value that we're adding. To me, it's important that we're looking at the competitive analysis aspects and that we're taking that up a level. And I personally attended the orphan drug discussions, and I thought the best discussions that we had, part of that is the landscape of where we are. And I think if we're driving down content on there's 3 basic ways of evaluating patents, and this is how big companies do that. That's driving down value, whereas I think we need to be at a much more strategic.
No, I would agree with you, and that's kind of the point of a series like this, is to educate a broad base of constituents.
Because we don't want
who
to
may
just
not
have 10 people who are patent attorneys attend.
Well, and the thing is, maybe we do, and we do a separate standalone event
Where
specifically
you dive
on that
deeper
topic.
on the standalone.
Right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you sort of hit the nail on the head. I think we want these to be, as Susan says, broad strokes, right? So we are appealing to a broader audience and educating them, and then we're going to supplement that with some programming that John's working on, and maybe some deeper dives in, you know, specific areas that we think will be important to a smaller segment of our membership.
Yeah, what I'm trying to do in addition to this, to supplement, is develop a curriculum that would be ongoing, that would do a deep dive in these topics and bring subject matter experts in. And it came out of a conversation at the MassBio annual meeting with some subject matter experts, and everybody identifying this as a significant gap and wanting to address it. So I think between the forums and this curriculum, and anybody who wants to get involved, let me know. I think it'd be very interesting. And again, very necessary.
So I guess I'm not getting a good pulse from the group. Are you guys interested in this? I'm hearing a lot of dead air.
Yes.
Yes, we're interested in it. Okay, and we feel like maybe I need a little energy in the room. You know I hate when we go radio silent, so we got to bring the energy back. So this is stuff we're interested in, and we think it's really important to our members. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So if you're excited about being part of this, you can either speak out now, or you can touch base with Susan offline.
I will speak up now.
All right.
So I actually wanted to speak a little bit about part 2, role of CRO, CMOs, and my comments are on the CRO drug discovery side. So recently I was invited to be at a panel. The broad topic was CROs going direct, how CROs actually investing in drug discovery by collaborating with partners, spinning out the ventures. So I think this all falls within how you increase the value to the partners. And I can say that from our company that we've created some joint ventures in exchange for equity, other arrangements where we feel we have particular expertise to offer. So just wondering whether that may fit into the part 2 of basically having different CROs, panel on different CROs saying, what are you doing when a small company with limited financing approaches you to develop a particular project or product, and how you could collaborate with them in a more collaborative type of way.
Like
to
a case
accomplish
study.
the goals of the project.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we were looking to get at.
Yeah.
And I think that panel was very successful because usually, if you're representing a CRO, at the end nobody wants to talk to you. But when I was talking about the projects we do and the new ventures and equity arrangements, and then I have people wanted to talk to you. So-
Yeah.
So I think it will generate interest. from-
No, I
from
think
the
that that's an
members.
important piece,
Yeah.
and that's why we realize that this group, it's very important for this group particularly to start thinking about this as they're working with their customers, and I think that's a perfect way to discuss.
Yeah, that's part of the new model that we're building these virtual, semi-virtual companies. They need to rely on CROs and CMOs to be strategic partners and not transaction providers. And I think Raj could also attest to that, what he's doing with Creagen. And that is a key part. And if you attended the CRO, CMO meeting recently, and Pete Aber and I were up on a panel, and we talked about that trend is inescapable. More and more of the drug development is being done outside of pharma and biotech and by CROs, and we need to nurture that. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, Creagen, we did with 3 companies actually, so we created IP for them, and we were part of the whole, the drug discovery process, and we stayed until the compound is licensed with pharma. So that's the value.
So that's great. So, Svelina, you want to participate on this particular one as well?
So Nick, can I ask you, are these CROs, CMOs here in Massachusetts based, or they're utilizing China?
Well, we are better, right?
Okay. No, I think that's a very good point, because pharma, big pharma, and again, at the end, many are looking for exits or major strategic partnerships. They're actually always excited to see biotech when they cut costs by using local CROs and not going after China or something. So I actually think it's a great point to the valuation chain. That's right. That's right. Exactly. I think that's a very good point, and that's something good synergy. Right here, like.
Yeah, BD Finance, I think we would be happy of leading part 1.
Okay, that would be great.
You get this?
And so I know for this last one, any drug discovery folks here?
Well, I'm always here.
So does this resonate? Do you think that this would be a good topic to be involved in?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking, like I said, we're always looking to help entrepreneurs, and again, being inclusive and helping them grow is how we're gonna, it's the reason why I'm here.
Right, and I think with bringing in maybe some case studies, I mean, that group in particular really seems to enjoy.
Again, I am a CRO, so the thing is, we are a critical part of this. And I think sometimes there's this disparity against CROs.
Not in this room.
Well,
right?
Experience. I mean, the CROs themselves feel sometimes left out.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, let me just say this, oftentimes you have speakers, you know you can help them. So sometimes when you approach them, yeah, it is selling, but I try to do a soft sell, not hard sell. But there are some that are hard sell. But again, it's every component of this, I think is interrelated. It's why we're a cluster.
Exactly.
Right? We're not a one, we're a cluster, which is very different bodies, very different units, very different purposes. And it's having each part of that healthy is what's going to help everybody else out here. So yes,
Okay.
drug discovery will be.
We'll be back. And Mark, I know you're really invested in this topic.
Yeah, I'm looking kind of at part 3 where you have EU.
It's just a suggestion, doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
In my mind, I almost see EU coming in at part 1A.
I was thinking that, yeah.
So that BD Finance, identifies, is there a value proposition here? Is there an idea? Is there a market? Do we go after it? Okay, good. Well, that's at the point where you start to have to kind of create your company or pull your team together before you start reaching out to CROs or before you kind of actually do some analytic case studies. So I might see EU right at like 1A or something.
Yeah, that sounds great.
In my opinion, I think on part 1 too, like when you look at the third bullet, what does value mean for different stakeholders? That's an opportunity where you can integrate, CRO, CMO has what they feel is value. Everybody, again, I can't emphasize enough how much, diagnostic companies felt, one diagnostic company corrected me and said that they were an information company, and the value was they were going to be able to help with personalized medicine because that patient wouldn't have to take that drug because we know that it doesn't work. That's value. And it just opened my eyes to how, everybody can fit in, all the different stakeholders can fit into value on the first part. And EU will show how whatever your business is, it really needs to be cognizant of of how different people are gonna look at it.
And I don't know, Rob, if you are interested or if it makes sense, but maybe it makes sense for Marcom to participate on that as well, to bring in some patient perspective.
Sure. I'd love to learn, I mean, back to the report from Sheila, it seemed like the theme was to try to change the big bad wolf story. So I'd love to hear her talk with Sarah about how we can, since the community is going to put so much emphasis onto this series, let's see if we can get some traction and change it.
Nelson?
Yeah, I was going to say to maybe a bit of what is being said here in terms of how what the CROs can, how they can help the system, I should say, by providing services or financial help. Because I think if you look at if you look at big pharma as the sort of end game for these smallish companies, which I think is usually the case, the importance of new versus incremental. I think most pharma's incremental, if you're in preclinical, isn't going to get you any interest. If you're in phase 2, if you finish your phase 2B and you can be in the market in 3 weeks, I mean, that's different. But of course, at the same time, novel, nobody believes in. You need to generate the data, so you can be stuck in the catch-22. Yes, we I mean, we don't want to slow the disease today. I think we're the same as everyone else. We want to stop it, reverse it. To do that, we have to have novel biology. But novel biology without data is a pipe dream. So what the CROs can do here, and everyone else, I should say, in sort of helping out that middle piece between the idea from the EU, to generate some data to say, look, this actually might have the legs. So, I mean, I think those pieces fit really nicely together.
So what do we think about the SDM CT participating in this one? I think there probably makes sense for.
What about regulatory? It seems like that's a very important component.
I think someone had mentioned that maybe it makes sense for regulatory to, in the CRO, CMO group.
That's what I was thinking for the breakthrough therapy sessions. Like, so breakthrough therapy are those drugs which are like, intended, as we all know, for like a quicker launch, shorter scales. And we are working closely with the regulatory agencies to help us get that designation. I was thinking, like, if I could partner with somebody from regulatory, we can put together at least an outline and then take it from there, present to this forum.
Alex, do you think that makes sense?
Yeah.
So just again, on legal regulatory, do you think it's part 2 that's better or more part 1 or the later part, right? Because you want to, because that's where you can have the patent and the reimbursement discussion, right? What is the life of the patent before you're going to get reimbursed eventually?
Well, maybe we kind of split that out a little bit. So regulatory sort of works maybe a little more with this group, and maybe we have some legal folks work with, it doesn't have to be the group specifically, it can be individuals from the groups that work together. Again, these were just suggestions to hopefully start some dialogue. But I think, Luba, maybe it makes sense for, you to work with Mark and in that group on the first one, and then I'm sure there's some value that can be brought at the last panel as well.
And also for you, we can, and we're already doing a panel on this, on strategic partnerships. And again, we could obviously make it a discussion a little bit different specifically for this, because that's also important. What kind of strategic partnership and alliances do you want to do? Do you want to go at the end and then have just a clean exit, or do you want to start doing strategic deals at the beginning?
Yeah, that's on our pipeline, right?
Yeah, no, that's gonna, but a part of it could be here as well.
I think FDD, I quickly present George before we left. I think this could be a good fit for FDD, like probably for part 2.
Okay.
Or maybe part 3, I think, or, we can discuss it with the group, and I'm sure that will be a follow-up telephone. But
yeah, so
we would like to chip in.
Yeah, Susan's gonna follow up with all this information, and if you've mentioned that you're interested in participating on a particular one of these, she's gonna follow up and probably set up calls specific to each one of these. And then we'll refine the ideas, and maybe they'll break out into part 1 and part 2, who knows, but we'll at least start the dialogue going so we can pull off something in the fall. And I think there's probably room for us to incorporate SEF somewhere in here. Gotta think about that a little bit more, right? Yes.
So I just want to highlight the role BD Finance might actually be able to play in part 3. and building the case and showing the value. There's obviously room there for making sure that the science business or the risk associated with all of this is translated. So
Sure.
in that side of it, just to highlight the fact that there might be some value for PD finance.
Yeah, and I think these themes will sort of play out throughout. And just because a particular maybe working group isn't a lead on this, it'll definitely be a theme that's touched upon, I think, in the execution of the event.
So perhaps what makes the most sense before we leave today is just get everybody's name who is concerned with being involved in either part 1, part 2, part 3. We can create just a call schedule and then brainstorm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay, so for part 1, we heard Mark was
Luba?
interested, Luba was interested, or BD Finance was interested, EU was interested.
Interested in part 1.
Okay. And then maybe
Susan, you can put marketing down on that.
marketing,
Okay.
so bring in a patient perspective there. For strategic partners, we know that Bobby is gonna work on taking the lead here, and then maybe we bring in the regulatory group.
And Alex as well.
And Alex as well. And then part 3, obviously drug discovery in the CRO group, Rob. And we heard FDD.
Yeah, he's in part 2, part 3.
Part 2,
to be-
okay,
to
so
be
we'll-
discussed, yeah.
And then maybe BSDM, CT. Okay. All right, are we excited about this?
We're excited.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. And Susan will follow up, and she'll also follow up with the link to the full report if you're interested. I know Dahlia already did her homework, but maybe some other folks are interested.